billionaire's disguise. Gabriel Mitchell sat in the driver's seat of a Mitchell Express delivery truck, dressed in the brown uniform of his own company. His hands gripped the steering wheel, rough from weeks of real work, and his blue eyes focused on the Sweet Auburn daycare across the street. Through the glass, he watched Jasmine Brooks, her locks catching the morning light, as she held a folder handed to her by two men in tailored suits. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock, then to disbelief. Her eyes scanned the documents, and her gaze locked on his truck. She moved closer to the window, her lips parting silently. "Who are you really?" she mouthed. Gabriel's heart raced. Every carefully built layer of his life, the penthouse, the private jets, the billions, felt fragile in that moment. The truth he had hidden to find authentic connection threatened to vanish in an instant. He was the owner of the company, a billionaire, and yet he had risked everything to be seen as an ordinary man. Now, everything that mattered could slip away in a single glance. What would you do if the person you loved had been living a complete lie? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow, another incredible story awaits. Let's begin. Gabriel Mitchell lived in a world that most could only dream of. From the 52nd floor of his glass penthouse, he could see the full sweep of Atlanta. The streets stretching toward Centennial Olympic Park, the Chattahoochee River glinting under the sun, and the city pulsing with life below. The skyline was magnificent, yet the view brought him no joy. He moved through the space like a shadow among expensive furniture and rare artwork, everything pristine, everything chosen to signal success. Mitchell Express was a company he had grown from his mother's small shipping business into a $3.2 billion logistics empire. Trucks carried goods from coast to coast, and the company's efficiency and reputation were unmatched. Yet, despite the global reach and prestige, Gabriel felt a gnawing emptiness. Meetings and boardrooms had replaced family dinners, and conversations were filtered through the lens of profit. Even his closest acquaintances seemed to interact with him as a wallet or a business card rather than a person. He dressed each morning in tailored suits, polished shoes, and expensive watches, each item a badge of achievement. Breakfasts were solitary, consumed in silence while reading reports, stock updates, and operational summaries. The penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, gourmet kitchen, and smart home features, felt less like a home and more like a stage where he performed the role expected of a billionaire CEO. The isolation was subtle at first. Friends from college had drifted away, absorbed in their own lives, and family gatherings had become rare, strained by the chasm between his wealth and theirs. Women he met through social events seemed more interested in his status than in him. Compliments were rarely personal, smiles were practiced. Every conversation felt transactional, and every new acquaintance carried an unspoken agenda. Even the laughter in his penthouse often felt hollow. The breaking point came during a board meeting that should have been routine. Gabriel sat at the head of a long mahogany table, flanked by executives discussing the next major expansion, acquisitions, and projections. As numbers and strategies filled the room, he found his gaze wandering toward the windows. Outside, a Mitchell Express delivery truck stopped in front of a small apartment building. The driver, uniform neat and posture relaxed, carried packages with a care and warmth that Gabriel had long forgotten existed. The man greeted each customer with a genuine smile and a few words of conversation. For the first time in years, Gabriel saw an interaction that was simple, human, and unforced. It struck him that this driver, like thousands of others across the country, experienced moments of connection and gratitude that money could never buy. The driver's work was physical, demanding, and unrewarded with fame or fortune, but it carried meaning. Gabriel realized he had built a life of wealth and influence without ever knowing what it felt like to touch the lives of people outside his circle. That evening, Gabriel returned to the solitude of his penthouse. The skyline shimmered as office lights flickered on across the city, yet the beauty he had once admired seemed distant. He could not remember the last time anyone had looked at him and seen the man he was beneath the fortune and power. Calls from investors went unanswered, dinners with other billionaires left him hollow, and the rare friends who remained were careful not to ask too many questions about his personal life. He replayed the boardroom moment over and over in his mind. A delivery driver, performing his duties with pride, had shown a form of happiness and connection that Gabriel had never experienced. It was a reminder that life, in its raw, unpolished form, contained value that no balance sheet could measure. A realization formed slowly, quietly, but firmly. He needed something more than money, more than accolades, more than the approval of people who saw him as untouchable. He needed to experience life as it was for ordinary people. By the following morning, the decision had solidified. Gabriel would step away from his penthouse, from the executive meetings, from the luxury that insulated him. He would take a leave of absence, explaining to the board that he required time for personal reflection. But more than reflection, he wanted immersion. He wanted to see the world through the eyes of those who had shaped his company from the ground up. The idea was audacious. He would disguise himself as an ordinary employee and join the ranks of his own company. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. He had never been one to hide, to blend in, to experience work at the level of his drivers, loaders, and warehouse staff. Yet it was precisely this fear that called to him. He wanted authentic connection, the kind that could not be bought or instructed, the kind that required vulnerability and presence. Gabriel spent the following days planning meticulously. He considered the logistics, the risks, and the practicalities of living as someone with no wealth, no privilege, no shield. The goal was clear: experience the world outside his skyscraper office, understand the lives of his employees firsthand, and if fortune allowed, encounter a person who would see him as he truly was, rather than as the sum of his possessions. As he looked once more from his window at the truck parked across the street, Gabriel felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. The city below moved at its usual pace, unaware of the secret plan forming in the penthouse above. For the first time, he sensed that he could truly find the kind of love and connection that had eluded him despite all his wealth. It would require courage, humility, and risk, but the possibility of finding someone who loved him for himself made every fear worthwhile. Gabriel Mitchell, Billionaire CEO, was about to leave the only life he had known and step into a world where he would be just another employee, searching for authenticity, human connection, and a chance at real love. Gabriel Mitchell's first step toward a new life was creating a new identity. He became Carlos Martinez, a 32-year-old man from Birmingham seeking a fresh start in Atlanta. The name was ordinary, chosen to blend in, and he adopted a backstory to match. A few years working for a smaller delivery company in Alabama before moving to the city. He rented a modest apartment in Sweet Auburn, a neighborhood steeped in history but far removed from the glass towers and luxury streets of downtown. The apartment was smaller than his former penthouse's living room, but the simplicity felt liberating. He replaced his designer suits with work boots, plain brown uniforms, and a cap that shadowed his face. Daily routines once filled with chauffeured rides, catered meals, and executive meetings were now replaced with public transportation, grocery runs, and long hours on his feet. He learned to carry packages, lift boxes, and navigate the logistics of heavy loads without complaint. Every ache in his back, every blister on his hands, reminded him that this work, the backbone of his empire, was real and meaningful. Training began under Jerome Thompson, a driver with 20 years of experience. Jerome was patient but unflinching in his honesty. "You're moving like a board," he said on the second day as Gabriel struggled with a stack of parcels. "We'll fix that. You'll get there, but you have to let go of the penthouse habits." Gabriel welcomed the instruction. He learned to manage routes, handle fragile items with care, and read customers' reactions. Each day, he discovered aspects of the city he had never noticed, despite years of living above it. Vine City's rich history, the quiet streets of Kirkwood, the colorful murals near West End. All places his drivers knew intimately, but he had overlooked from his office windows. The job demanded more than physical effort. It required attentiveness and patience. He learned to navigate temperamental customers, missed deliveries, and complicated directions. Jerome taught him to anticipate needs, to notice small details, and to respond with respect and humility. Gabriel found satisfaction in small successes. A child greeting him at the door, a customer expressing gratitude for a timely delivery, a smile exchanged after a challenging street navigation. These interactions were fleeting, yet authentic, and for the first time, he understood the human element behind his company's success. Carlos Martinez became part of the neighborhood rhythm. He greeted shop owners by name, learned local shortcuts to avoid traffic, and began to understand the struggles that people faced daily. He saw parents juggling jobs and school schedules, elderly residents relying on timely deliveries, and workers who performed grueling labor without recognition. Each encounter reminded him that wealth and power were meaningless without connection. As the days passed, Gabriel's confidence grew. He moved from tentative steps to efficient routines, and Jerome acknowledged the progress. "You've got the right attitude now," Jerome said one afternoon, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's not about the money you carry or the title you hold. It's about doing the job right and respecting the people you serve." The transformation affected more than his work life. Returning to the modest apartment at night, he no longer felt the emptiness that had haunted the penthouse. The simplicity, the ordinary meals, the quiet streets of Sweet Auburn, these became grounding forces. Gabriel discovered joy in small tasks. Fixing a squeaky wheel on a cart, organizing packages efficiently, helping a customer carry groceries. Each act, ordinary to most, filled a void that wealth had never touched. Neighborhood interactions deepened his perspective. Local shopkeepers began recognizing Carlos as someone reliable and respectful. They shared brief conversations, recommendations for restaurants, and advice on navigating Atlanta's streets. These connections, although simple, were genuine. For the first time, Gabriel experienced mutual respect not tied to status or influence. One morning, while making a routine delivery in Kirkwood, he noticed children playing outside a community center. One of the teachers waved him over to help carry boxes of art supplies inside. Their smiles and unguarded gratitude struck him profoundly. He realized that this level of human connection, small gestures of trust and appreciation, was more fulfilling than any meeting with executives or shareholders. Each day brought new lessons. He learned to read the city as his drivers did, observing traffic patterns, anticipating weather delays, and understanding neighborhood dynamics. He discovered areas where his company could improve services, not from reports, but from direct observation and engagement. Gabriel realized he had been a disconnected leader, removed from the experiences of those who made his success possible. By the end of the first month, Carlos had earned respect among his peers. Warehouse staff and delivery drivers began to include him in casual conversations. He laughed at minor mistakes, shared advice, and learned to accept criticism without ego. Every interaction reinforced the contrast between his old life, where people deferred to wealth and title, and this new life, where respect was earned through effort and integrity. One day, as he carried packages along Edgewood Avenue, a resident offered him iced tea. "Thanks for getting this here on time," she said with a warm smile. Carlos accepted it gratefully, and in that moment, Gabriel recognized a truth he had long ignored. Human connection did not require wealth or power. It required presence, attention, and care. Carlos Martinez became more than a disguise. He became a man capable of understanding lives far different from his own, capable of seeing the value in labor and community. His hands, once manicured for boardrooms, now bore the calluses of honest work. His body, once accustomed to comfort, now carried strength born from effort. And his mind, once focused on profit and status, now appreciated human stories in their raw and meaningful form. The transformation was not complete, but Gabriel felt change in every interaction. He had stepped out of his protected world, into streets filled with ordinary struggles and joys. Each delivery, each handshake, each genuine smile reinforced the purpose behind his audacious experiment. to find authentic connection, to rediscover what mattered, and perhaps to encounter someone who could see him for who he truly was. As the sun set over Atlanta, Carlos Martinez finished the last delivery of the day. The streets hummed with life, laughter, and chatter. Gabriel paused, watching children run past a small playground, neighbors greeting one another, and shopkeepers closing for the evening. He realized that this world, ordinary in many eyes, was extraordinary in its authenticity. The sense of belonging and contribution, no matter how small, was a reward far richer than any bank balance. For the first time, Gabriel felt the possibility of something real, something beyond wealth, beyond status, beyond isolation. He had left the penthouse behind, not only in distance but in perspective. The city had become his classroom, and human connection his curriculum. What he could not anticipate was that the person who would show him love, in its most honest form, was waiting just ahead, unaware of the man behind the uniform. Carlos Martinez approached the small Sweet Auburn daycare center on a crisp November morning, balancing a stack of art supplies and a clipboard. The children's laughter echoed through the playground as he parked the delivery truck and stepped onto the sidewalk. His blue eyes scanned the entrance, and that's when he saw her, Jasmine Brooks. She moved with an ease and warmth that immediately drew attention. Her locks framed a face that glowed in the autumn sunlight, and her smile was unguarded, genuine. She was kneeling on the playground, reading aloud to a group of 4-year-olds who hung on every word. When she noticed him, she straightened, walking toward the fence with curiosity in her eyes. "You must be from Mitchell Express," she said, glancing at the supplies he carried. "I'm Jasmine. Thank you for bringing these. We've been waiting all week." Carlos managed a modest smile. "I'm Carlos. These kids are lucky to have someone who cares so much." Her laugh was light, infectious. "They really love story time. Books help them dream bigger than their circumstances sometimes let them." Over the following weeks, Carlos returned on his routes, each visit allowing brief conversations that gradually became longer. He learned about Jasmine's life. Raised by her grandmother Ruth after her parents died in a car accident, she had worked tirelessly to achieve her degree in early childhood education at Clark Atlanta University. Now earning just $28,000 a year at the daycare, she dreamed of expanding her reach to help more children in the community. Despite limited resources, Jasmine dedicated herself fully to her students, organizing activities, rallying volunteers, and offering support to families in need. Jasmine had a way of noticing the small details others overlooked. She remembered each child's favorite color, their favorite story, and their personal challenges. Her energy was consistent, her commitment unwavering, and her kindness extended beyond the children to the families and neighbors who relied on the daycare's services. Carlos began to realize the depth of her compassion. This was someone who saw value not in titles, wealth, or accolades, but in people themselves. As the weeks passed, their interactions became natural. Carlos would hand over deliveries while Jasmine offered coffee from a thermos, chatting about the children, the neighborhood, and occasionally personal dreams. He listened, learning not only about her work, but about the community she loved and the life she had built for herself through perseverance and care. Each conversation revealed layers of intelligence, warmth, and integrity. The first invitation outside the routine of deliveries came one morning as they talked near the daycare's gate. Jasmine mentioned she had never seen the Christmas decorations at Centennial Olympic Park. "I keep meaning to go downtown, but by the time I finish work and help Grandma Ruth with dinner, I'm usually too tired." "I could show you," Carlos said, his heart quickening. "This Saturday, maybe?" Their first date was simple yet transformative. Walking through Centennial Olympic Park, they observed the city together, sharing thoughts, stories, and laughter. Jasmine noticed details Carlos had ignored for years. The way sunlight reflected off buildings, the music drifting from street performers, the small quirks that made Atlanta alive. Carlos saw the city through her eyes, noticing the neighborhood's people and energy that his life in the penthouse had obscured. Dinner followed at a small diner in Little 5 Points. No fancy reservations, no costly dishes, just burgers, fries, and conversation that flowed naturally. Jasmine spoke of her vision for the daycare, her hope to expand programs, and her concern for the children and families who relied on her. Carlos shared aspects of Carlos Martinez's life, carefully avoiding references that could reveal his true identity. He spoke of small aspirations, of wanting to make a modest difference in the community through his work. "You know what I love about you?" Jasmine said at one point, her gaze steady. "You really listen. You don't act like you have all the answers. Too many people do, and it makes them impossible to talk to." Carlos felt a pang of both guilt and affection. He wanted to tell her the truth, yet he also wanted to experience this connection without the weight of his real identity influencing her perception. In her presence, he felt understood, appreciated, and seen as a man rather than a status or figurehead. In the weeks that followed, their friendship deepened. Carlos began to accompany Jasmine to community events on his days off from deliveries. He attended church services at Big Bethel AME Church, where gospel music resonated through the sanctuary, and he met families who welcomed him as part of Jasmine's circle. He shared meals at Busy Bee Cafe in the West End, tasting soul food he had never experienced in a corporate setting, and he joined her in volunteer efforts to support local programs. Grandma Ruth, wise and perceptive, observed Carlos closely. She was cautious, aware that many men who came into Jasmine's life could not be trusted. Yet she noticed the respect, patience, and consistency with which he treated her granddaughter. "That boy's got good manners," she said one evening. "He looks at you like you hung the moon, but there's something different about him. Just make sure you see it too." Their relationship continued to evolve organically. Small gestures, a smile, a shared joke, a helping hand, built trust and familiarity. Carlos found himself looking forward to each delivery route that brought him into contact with Jasmine, cherishing moments of conversation and the quiet intimacy of shared experiences. For the first time, Gabriel felt the possibility of something real, something beyond wealth, beyond status, beyond isolation. He had left the penthouse behind, not only in distance but in perspective. The city had become his classroom, and human connection his curriculum. What he could not anticipate was that the person who would show him love, in its most honest form, was waiting just ahead, unaware of the man behind the uniform. Carlos Martinez approached the small Sweet Auburn daycare center on a crisp November morning, balancing a stack of art supplies and a clipboard. The children's laughter echoed through the playground as he parked the delivery truck and stepped onto the sidewalk. His blue eyes scanned the entrance, and that's when he saw her, Jasmine Brooks. She moved with an ease and warmth that immediately drew attention. Her locks framed a face that glowed in the autumn sunlight, and her smile was unguarded, genuine. She was kneeling on the playground, reading aloud to a group of 4-year-olds who hung on every word. When she noticed him, she straightened, walking toward the fence with curiosity in her eyes. "You must be from Mitchell Express," she said, glancing at the supplies he carried. "I'm Jasmine. Thank you for bringing these. We've been waiting all week." Carlos managed a modest smile. "I'm Carlos. These kids are lucky to have someone who cares so much." Her laugh was light, infectious. "They really love story time. Books help them dream bigger than their circumstances sometimes let them." Over the following weeks, Carlos returned on his routes, each visit allowing brief conversations that gradually became longer. He learned about Jasmine's life. Raised by her grandmother Ruth after her parents died in a car accident, she had worked tirelessly to achieve her degree in early childhood education at Clark Atlanta University. Now earning just $28,000 a year at the daycare, she dreamed of expanding her reach to help more children in the community. Despite limited resources, Jasmine dedicated herself fully to her students, organizing activities, rallying volunteers, and offering support to families in need. Jasmine had a way of noticing the small details others overlooked. She remembered each child's favorite color, their favorite story, and their personal challenges. Her energy was consistent, her commitment unwavering, and her kindness extended beyond the children to the families and neighbors who relied on the daycare's services. Carlos began to realize the depth of her compassion. This was someone who saw value not in titles, wealth, or accolades, but in people themselves. As the weeks passed, their interactions became natural. Carlos would hand over deliveries while Jasmine offered coffee from a thermos, chatting about the children, the neighborhood, and occasionally personal dreams. He listened, learning not only about her work, but about the community she loved and the life she had built for herself through perseverance and care. Each conversation revealed layers of intelligence, warmth, and integrity. The first invitation outside the routine of deliveries came one morning as they talked near the daycare's gate. Jasmine mentioned she had never seen the Christmas decorations at Centennial Olympic Park. "I keep meaning to go downtown, but by the time I finish work and help Grandma Ruth with dinner, I'm usually too tired." "I could show you," Carlos said, his heart quickening. "This Saturday, maybe?" Their first date was simple yet transformative. Walking through Centennial Olympic Park, they observed the city together, sharing thoughts, stories, and laughter. Jasmine noticed details Carlos had ignored for years. The way sunlight reflected off buildings, the music drifting from street performers, the small quirks that made Atlanta alive. Carlos saw the city through her eyes, noticing the neighborhood's people and energy that his life in the penthouse had obscured. Dinner followed at a small diner in Little 5 Points. No fancy reservations, no costly dishes, just burgers, fries, and conversation that flowed naturally. Jasmine spoke of her vision for the daycare, her hope to expand programs, and her concern for the children and families who relied on her. Carlos shared aspects of Carlos Martinez's life, carefully avoiding references that could reveal his true identity. He spoke of small aspirations, of wanting to make a modest difference in the community through his work. "You know what I love about you?" Jasmine said at one point, her gaze steady. "You really listen. You don't act like you have all the answers. Too many people do, and it makes them impossible to talk to." Carlos felt a pang of both guilt and affection. He wanted to tell her the truth, yet he also wanted to experience this connection without the weight of his real identity influencing her perception. In her presence, he felt understood, appreciated, and seen as a man rather than a status or figurehead. In the weeks that followed, their friendship deepened. Carlos began to accompany Jasmine to community events on his days off from deliveries. He attended church services at Big Bethel AME Church, where gospel music resonated through the sanctuary, and he met families who welcomed him as part of Jasmine's circle. He shared meals at Busy Bee Cafe in the West End, tasting soul food he had never experienced in a corporate setting, and he joined her in volunteer efforts to support local programs. Grandma Ruth, wise and perceptive, observed Carlos closely. She was cautious, aware that many men who came into Jasmine's life could not be trusted. Yet she noticed the respect, patience, and consistency with which he treated her granddaughter. "That boy's got good manners," she said one evening. "He looks at you like you hung the moon, but there's something different about him. Just make sure you see it too." Their relationship continued to evolve organically. Small gestures, a smile, a shared joke, a helping hand, built trust and familiarity. Carlos found himself looking forward to each delivery route that brought him into contact with Jasmine, cherishing moments of conversation and the quiet intimacy of shared experiences. One chilly afternoon, they wandered through Grant Park together, discussing children's books, local history, and their dreams. Jasmine explained her desire to make education more accessible in underserved neighborhoods, while Carlos listened, absorbing not only her words but the passion and sincerity behind them. Her dedication inspired him in ways his corporate achievements never had. By the time Thanksgiving arrived, the foundation of their bond had grown strong. They shared meals, laughter, and long walks through streets decorated for the season. For Carlos, each encounter with Jasmine illuminated what had been missing in his life. Someone who valued character over wealth, empathy over status, and authenticity over appearances. He began to understand that love and connection were not found through money, power, or titles, but through consistent presence, care, and shared experiences. Jasmine's influence extended beyond romance. She offered him a new perspective on life, work, and the meaning of success. By the end of Part 3, Gabriel, as Carlos, had not only developed a deep admiration for Jasmine, but had also started to see himself through the lens of genuine human connection. The ordinary routines of deliveries and conversations revealed truths about both the city and himself. And while he still carried the secret of his real identity, the seeds of love and understanding had been planted, ready to grow under circumstances neither of them could yet predict. Weekends became a window into a life Gabriel had never known. As Carlos Martinez, he accompanied Jasmine to her favorite places, experiencing the vibrancy and warmth of her world firsthand. Sunday mornings often started at Big Bethel AME Church. The choir's voices filled the sanctuary, lifting prayers and songs in unison. Carlos watched Jasmine as she sang, her eyes closed and her smile radiant. The congregation welcomed him without question, and he felt a sense of belonging that no boardroom meeting or luxury gala had ever offered. After service, they visited soul food restaurants across Sweet Auburn and the West End. At Busy Bee Cafe, he tasted fried chicken and collard greens, seasoned with care and tradition. He learned the stories behind each dish, often told by the owners themselves. Jasmine introduced him to neighbors and shopkeepers, many of whom shared their struggles and triumphs. Listening, helping when he could, and participating in small community projects, Carlos discovered the richness of human connection that existed outside wealth and status. Grandma Ruth was ever present, her keen eyes observing Carlos closely. She welcomed him politely, but her questions were deliberate and probing. "You care for Jasmine, that's clear," she said one evening as they sat around the kitchen table after dinner. "But I need to know why you're really here. People don't always show their true intentions." Carlos felt the weight of his deception acutely. Each time he looked at Jasmine, her laughter and generosity reminded him of the reasons he had taken this extraordinary step. He wanted to tell her the truth, yet the fear of losing the only authentic connection he had ever known held him back. He feared that revealing his identity would undo everything: the trust, the joy, the simple moments of shared humanity. Still, the bond between them grew. Shared experiences, fixing broken toys at the daycare, organizing small neighborhood events, attending cultural programs, wove their lives together. Carlos listened to Jasmine's stories of children learning to read for the first time, of parents who had nowhere else to turn, and of challenges she faced daily with resilience and determination. He admired her ability to see potential where others saw limits. During walks through the neighborhood, Carlos and Jasmine discussed hopes and dreams. She spoke about expanding the daycare, creating programs that could help children develop not just academically, but emotionally and socially. He shared thoughts framed as Carlos's modest aspirations, often tempered by caution and humility. Each conversation, each moment of vulnerability, strengthened the trust between them. Gabriel also grappled with his internal struggle. He had built an empire from the ground up, accumulated wealth beyond measure, and yet he found more satisfaction in helping a teacher organize supplies than he had ever found in signing multi-million-dollar contracts. The simplicity of these interactions, the clarity of purpose, and the authenticity of love and friendship were revelations he had long denied. Jasmine's world contrasted sharply with his former life of opulent isolation. He was immersed in realities he had never faced. Families struggling to make ends meet, children thriving on encouragement and attention, and a neighborhood that depended on mutual support and care. Yet he saw joy and fulfillment that money could not buy. He realized that the success he had measured in billions of dollars had never taught him about patience, empathy, or the quiet satisfaction of making a difference in someone else's life. Grandma Ruth's suspicion lingered, a reminder of the delicate balance Gabriel maintained. Her wisdom was unwavering, her insights sharp. She noticed the consistency in his behavior, the respect he showed to everyone, and the genuine affection he held for Jasmine. Yet she also sensed the absence of complete transparency. Each encounter with her reminded Gabriel that honesty was the foundation of trust, and that the longer he waited, the harder it would be to preserve it. Despite the tension, love continued to grow. Carlos and Jasmine shared quiet evenings at her small apartment, watching old movies or discussing books that inspired them. They celebrated small victories, like a child mastering a new skill or the successful completion of a neighborhood cleanup. The intimacy of these moments allowed Gabriel to understand the depth of connection that comes not from wealth or influence, but from shared purpose and mutual respect. He began to see Jasmine not as someone from a lower socioeconomic status, but as a person whose values, dedication, and courage mirrored the best of what he aspired to become. She had created her own world of meaning and impact, independent of wealth or title, and her vision inspired him to reconsider the life he had left behind. Each weekend reinforced the contrast between his two lives. The penthouse, the private jets, and the formal dinners now felt hollow compared to the richness of Jasmine's world. He had never experienced such authenticity, and it awakened something in him he could not ignore, a desire to be part of a life built on honesty, care, and true companionship. Yet the shadow of the lie lingered. Every smile exchanged, every shared confidence, reminded him of the risk he had taken. What if Jasmine discovered the truth? Would it destroy the trust they had built? Or could the authenticity of their bond survive the revelation of his identity? The thought was both terrifying and motivating. By the time winter approached, Gabriel understood that his experiment had changed him profoundly. He was no longer the man defined solely by wealth and achievement. As Carlos, he had learned to listen, to serve, and to value relationships over power. He had seen firsthand the impact of his company through the eyes of those who lived in neighborhoods his penthouse had never touched. The love between him and Jasmine, nurtured in the ordinary moments of community, school visits, and shared meals, became a powerful force. It was grounded in respect, shared experiences, and the realization that their worlds, though different in resources and status, could intersect meaningfully when approached with humility and care. And so, while the deception weighed heavily on him, the growing bond with Jasmine revealed a truth he could no longer ignore. Love was not measured by bank accounts, social influence, or appearances. It was measured by presence, consistency, and the willingness to engage with another person's life fully and sincerely. Each encounter, each weekend spent in her world, reinforced the profound lesson that had been missing in Gabriel's life for years. The man who had once viewed success as a tally of profits now measured it in moments of human connection, in laughter shared, in small victories celebrated together. And though the truth of his identity remained hidden, the heart of the matter was undeniable. He had found joy, purpose, and a connection that was more valuable than anything money could buy. A sharp chill cut through the Sweet Auburn morning as Carlos approached the daycare for his routine deliveries. The streets were quieter than usual, leaves drifting lazily along the sidewalks. Something felt different. His intuition prickled, though he could not yet name why. Parked outside the center were two men in dark suits, their posture formal, eyes scanning the building. Carlos instinctively froze, gripping the delivery clipboard tighter. He recognized the meticulous way they carried themselves. These were not casual visitors. They handed a thick folder to Jasmine, who stepped back, her eyes widening in alarm as she examined the documents. Carlos watched from the truck, heart pounding. Her face shifted rapidly, confusion, disbelief, betrayal. She glanced up toward the street and caught his eyes through the windshield. Mouth slightly open, she mouthed the words, "Who are you really?" It was the moment he had feared. Every step he had taken to experience authentic connection, every risk to be seen beyond his wealth, now teetered on the edge of collapse. His secret, the identity of Carlos Martinez, was about to shatter the fragile trust he had built with Jasmine. Later that afternoon, Jasmine stood in front of his small Sweet Auburn apartment, folder clutched to her chest. Her eyes, wide and uncertain, searched his face for answers. "Carlos, or should I say, Gabriel Mitchell." Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. "How could you do this? How could you lie to me for so long?" Gabriel's throat tightened. He wanted to reach out, to explain, but the words felt insufficient against the magnitude of the revelation. "I never wanted to hurt you," he began, voice low. I needed to know what it felt like to be seen as a person, not a billionaire, not a CEO. I wanted a connection that wasn't based on my money or my status. And with you, I felt real for the first time in years." Jasmine shook her head, stepping back. "Real? You weren't real. Carlos Martinez doesn't exist. Everything I thought I knew about you was a lie. How am I supposed to trust my own judgment now?" Gabriel swallowed, struggling to maintain composure. He had imagined this moment countless times, but never in a way that could truly capture her pain. "Everything I felt for you, every moment, every conversation, every delivery, it was real. I lied only about who I was, not about what I felt. You've changed me. You've shown me the life I could actually live, the kind of person I can be when I stop hiding behind money." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You deceived me. You made me fall in love with a person who never existed. And now I don't know what any of it means." Gabriel took a tentative step forward. "I understand why you feel that way. And I accept it. I would do anything to show you that my love was never a game, that I never intended to manipulate you. I wanted to be seen and loved for who I could truly be, not who the world expects me to be." Jasmine's gaze drifted toward the folder in her hands. Photos from charity events, articles about Mitchell Express, proof of wealth, and evidence of his real identity. Each image seemed to reinforce the gap between the life she had assumed and the truth before her. She felt a storm of emotions, hurt, anger, confusion, and yet beneath it all, a stubborn thread of the affection she had developed for Carlos. "You lived a lie," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "And I loved him. I loved Carlos. I don't know if I can reconcile that with the man standing here now." Gabriel's hands shook slightly as he gestured toward her. "I'm still the same person you laughed with, the same person who helped you organize the daycare, who stayed through long afternoons listening to the kids and the neighborhood stories. I am still the man who wants to spend every day trying to make life better with you. My name, my bank account, they don't change the heart of what we shared." She stepped back, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. "You made me doubt everything I felt. You made me doubt my own ability to see people clearly. How do I know you weren't just playing a role the whole time?" Gabriel's voice caught. "Because everything I felt, every choice I made while I was Carlos, was grounded in truth. I wasn't performing for you. I was learning how to be human again, how to love, and how to understand life beyond the walls of a penthouse and a corporate office. I wanted to earn your trust as a partner, not as a billionaire." She turned, pacing a few steps, gripping the folder as if it could anchor her. "You had access to every resource imaginable. You could have lived any life you wanted, traveled anywhere, bought anything. And instead, you hid in this disguise." Gabriel nodded. "Because I realized the only thing I was missing couldn't be bought. It wasn't money, not power, not influence. It was connection. It was love that saw me, not my wealth. And I found that in you." Jasmine's eyes softened, though suspicion and hurt remained. She sank onto the bench nearby, head in her hands. "I don't even know if I can trust my own heart anymore. I feel foolish, and yet part of me remembers every smile, every conversation. I remember laughing with him, not with a CEO, but with a person who cared. How do I make sense of that?" Gabriel knelt beside her, careful not to crowd her space. "I can't erase the deception. I won't pretend it didn't happen. But I can promise this. Everything beyond that lie was true. You taught me what it means to care, to serve, to see someone fully. And that's the man I am, both Carlos and Gabriel, because one led me to the other." Silence lingered between them. The sounds of the neighborhood, the children's laughter, a dog barking in the distance, a car passing on Auburn Avenue, formed a backdrop to the tension in the air. Jasmine looked at him, searching for the sincerity she hoped to find, a thread of authenticity amid the betrayal. "I need time," she finally whispered. "I need to understand what this all means, and whether what I felt was for him, for you, or for an idea of love I wanted to believe in." Gabriel nodded solemnly, standing slowly. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait. And I'll do whatever it takes to show you that the love you experienced wasn't a trick, wasn't a game. It's real, and it's for you, not for anything else." As she turned and walked away, folder clutched tightly, Gabriel remained standing, the weight of the revelation heavy on his shoulders. His heart pounded, torn between fear of losing her and a renewed understanding of what he had discovered about life, love, and himself. For the first time, he understood the consequences of his actions fully. Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had risked everything for the chance to experience something real. And he knew that, despite the heartbreak, this truth would be the defining moment in both their lives. The weeks that followed were quiet, tense, and heavy with reflection. Gabriel returned to his Atlanta penthouse, its vast spaces now seeming cavernous and cold. The high ceilings, polished floors, and walls lined with modern art offered no comfort. He moved through the rooms mechanically, handling calls, reviewing reports, and attending meetings, yet nothing held meaning. The luxury that once symbolized success now reminded him of isolation. Each evening, he replayed the confrontation with Jasmine in his mind. The shock in her eyes, the tremor in her voice, the disbelief in her words. He realized that in his pursuit of authenticity, he had jeopardized the very connection he had sought. Gabriel understood, with a clarity that pierced through years of wealth and power, that money alone could not create fulfillment. Without genuine human connection, his billions had been meaningless. Meanwhile, Jasmine withdrew to her world, spending time at the daycare and with her grandmother, Ruth. Each day she sifted through the emotions Gabriel's revelation had stirred: anger, hurt, confusion, and a lingering sense of admiration. She wrestled with questions about trust and intent, unsure whether the love she had felt was real or a construct designed by a man with the resources to manipulate outcomes. Driven by both curiosity and caution, Jasmine began researching Gabriel's life, seeking evidence of his true character. She discovered articles detailing quiet philanthropic efforts, scholarships for students at Clark Atlanta University, disaster relief contributions along the Gulf Coast, and programs supporting employees during economic downturns. Nothing about these efforts was flashy or self-promotional. They reflected genuine care rather than a pursuit of recognition. She learned about his upbringing. Raised by a single mother in Birmingham, Alabama, after his father passed away when Gabriel was 8. His mother, Linda Mitchell, worked 2 jobs to keep their small shipping business afloat. Gabriel had spent his childhood accompanying her on deliveries, learning the logistics trade from the ground up. He had not inherited wealth. He had earned it by expanding a modest family business while maintaining fair treatment for employees and communities. This discovery shifted Jasmine's perspective. Her initial suspicion gave way to understanding. Gabriel's deception, though painful, had not been born of malice or self-interest. His intent had been to experience life as others lived it, to connect authentically without the filter of wealth or status. The man she had loved as Carlos had existed, just under the guise of a different name. Grandma Ruth, perceptive and wise, offered counsel during one evening in the small apartment above the soul food restaurant. "Baby girl," she said, gently placing a hand on Jasmine's, "I can see why you're hurt. No one likes to be deceived. But think carefully, was it the love itself that was false, or the circumstances in which it was revealed? Some people hide truths because they want to protect what matters most." Jasmine reflected on Ruth's words. She remembered how Gabriel, as Carlos, had treated her and the children, with patience, respect, and consistent kindness. She recalled the time he had spent fixing the playground, listening to parents, and helping organize supplies. Every action had been genuine, every effort sincere. The deceit was in the identity, not in the heart. Gabriel, in his solitude, began to recognize his own growth. The experience of living as Carlos had transformed him. He understood the limitations of his prior life. Board meetings, quarterly earnings, and exclusive social circles had offered no insight into human connection. Now, having engaged with neighbors, customers, and Jasmine, he comprehended the value of empathy, patience, and listening. His wealth had been a tool, not a substitute for meaningful relationships. Each day apart reinforced their individual growth. Jasmine processed her feelings, weighing hurt against love, skepticism against evidence of genuine intent. Gabriel, on the other hand, confronted the hollowness of a life measured in dollars rather than impact. He resolved to carry forward the lessons learned from his time as Carlos, to value people for who they were, to engage fully in communities, and to prioritize love and connection over power and prestige. The separation also allowed them to recognize the importance of agency and choice in love. Gabriel understood that reconciliation could not be demanded. Trust could not be forced. Jasmine realized that forgiveness and acceptance required both evidence and reflection. The weeks apart became a crucible, testing the strength of the bond they had forged and the sincerity of their intentions. Ruth's guidance remained central. She encouraged Jasmine to examine not just the deception, but the consistency of Gabriel's character. "Look at how he treats the people around him," Ruth advised. "Look at the ways he steps in quietly, without expectation of praise. That tells you more about a man than his bank account ever could." By the end of the 3 weeks, both Gabriel and Jasmine had gained clarity. Gabriel recognized the true value of connection, understanding that his previous life had lacked the richness of genuine relationships. Jasmine, having reviewed his actions, history, and motivations, began to see that the love she had felt had been authentic, even if the identity had been disguised. The foundation of respect, care, and shared experience remained intact, waiting for the opportunity to rebuild. In solitude, Gabriel made a silent promise. If given a second chance, he would live transparently, blending the lessons learned as Carlos with the resources he possessed as Gabriel Mitchell. He would ensure that wealth never again stood between him and meaningful connection, that humility would guide his decisions, and that authenticity would govern his actions. Jasmine, too, emerged with a renewed sense of clarity. She recognized that vulnerability carried risk, but also the possibility of profound reward. Her reflections affirmed that love was not simple, nor should it be. It required discernment, trust, and the courage to see beyond surface appearances to the truth of a person's character. As the weeks closed, both were poised on the edge of a new understanding. Distance had allowed them to reflect, weigh evidence, and assess intention. Gabriel had come to see the limits of wealth, Jasmine the depth of sincerity. And in this shared yet separate journey, they discovered the essential truth. Love, when grounded in honesty and respect, could survive even the most challenging of revelations. The separation had tested them, yet it had also prepared them for the possibility of reunion. Not as a continuation of deception, but as a meeting of equals, two people shaped by experience, ready to build a partnership rooted in authenticity and mutual understanding. The afternoon air on Auburn Avenue carried the faint hum of city life as Gabriel waited outside the research library. The sun was low, casting a soft glow over the historic brick buildings. His palms were tight around the strap of his bag, heart beating faster than he cared to admit. Weeks apart had been long, heavy, and instructive, but now the moment for truth and reconciliation had arrived. Jasmine emerged from the library, her stack of books in hand, eyes scanning the street before settling on him. She paused, a mixture of caution and curiosity in her gaze. "Gabriel," she said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. He stepped forward slowly, maintaining distance, giving her space while trying to convey the sincerity in his posture. "Jasmine," he began, "thank you for meeting me. I know the last time we spoke, everything felt broken. I understand why, and I accept responsibility for the deception." She studied him silently, the memories of weeks spent apart and the hurt they carried still visible on her face. "I've thought a lot about us," she said finally. "I've tried to separate the man I knew from the man I thought I knew. It's been difficult." Gabriel nodded. "I know, and I don't want to ask for forgiveness lightly. I want to show you that everything I felt, everything I learned from you and with you was real. Not Carlos, Not Gabriel the billionaire, just me trying to live authentically. For the first time in weeks, a small, cautious smile appeared on Jasmine's face. "I've realized something," she said, lowering her books. "The love I felt wasn't for a name or a bank account. It was for the way I felt when I was with him. And if that feeling was real, then maybe it wasn't the identity that mattered. It was the person underneath." Gabriel's chest tightened with hope. "I want to rebuild, if you'll allow it, on equal terms. I don't want to impose wealth or status between us. I want us to make decisions together, to respect each other's experiences, and to grow as partners, not as CEO and employee, but as equals." Jasmine considered this. She had seen glimpses of Gabriel's authentic self over their weeks together, and she recognized his efforts had not been superficial. "I need honesty," she said simply, "and consistency. I need to see that the lessons you learned while living as Carlos aren't temporary." "I love you," he said, looking into her eyes. "Not for the world we come from, but for the life we've chosen to create together. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes, and her voice broke with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, enveloping him in an embrace that reflected joy, relief, and enduring love. Around them, applause and cheers erupted. Children ran forward to hug them both, neighbors offered congratulations, and the music swelled, filling the courtyard with celebration. Their wedding took place the following spring at the Atlanta History Center, in the Swan House Gardens. The ceremony balanced both worlds seamlessly. Jasmine's community friends from Sweet Auburn sat alongside Gabriel's colleagues and business associates. The atmosphere was one of unity, celebration, and respect, rather than division. The Morehouse College Glee Club performed, blending gospel and jazz, a perfect reflection of the couple's journey. The reception honored both cultures and traditions. Soul food catered by local restaurants sat next to elegant dishes from the city's best chefs. Guests mingled freely, bridging neighborhoods and industries, creating connections inspired by the union of Gabriel and Jasmine. It was a testament to love's ability to transcend status and circumstance, showing that relationships rooted in mutual respect and shared values could unite disparate worlds. Gabriel gifted Jasmine the deed to a building in Sweet Auburn, where she could expand her daycare center, a project she had dreamed of for years. Together, they planned the expansion, ensuring it served the community authentically. Gabriel contributed resources and guidance, but Jasmine led the vision, creating a partnership that valued both experience and influence equally. The story of their love became more than a personal triumph. It became a lesson for the wider community. Gabriel's journey demonstrated that wealth alone could not replace meaningful human connection. Jasmine's experience showed that love required both trust and discernment, but when rooted in respect and shared purpose, it could thrive across differences. Their relationship inspired others in Sweet Auburn and beyond. Neighbors saw the power of genuine partnership and community involvement. Families at the daycare experienced the benefits of their combined efforts, while Gabriel's company began integrating social responsibility initiatives inspired by his time as Carlos. Together, they created programs that addressed real needs without imposing solutions, emphasizing collaboration and empowerment. Through their story, the lessons were clear. Authentic love thrives when individuals see beyond appearances and status. Character, integrity, and shared values matter more than wealth or recognition. Vulnerability and honesty are the foundation of connection, and when both partners embrace them, they elevate one another. Gabriel's humility and Jasmine's insight combined to demonstrate that love could transform not only a relationship, but also a community. Their life together continued with a focus on balance. Gabriel remained active in the company, maintaining connections with employees and local initiatives, while Jasmine expanded her influence in early childhood education. Together, they attended city events, hosted neighborhood gatherings, and worked side by side on projects that strengthened the bonds between their worlds. The culmination of their journey, the proposal, the wedding, and their ongoing partnership, served as proof that love rooted in authenticity could overcome challenges, bridge divides, and create lasting impact. It showed that real connection requires effort, respect, and courage, and that the rewards extend beyond personal happiness to influence the wider community. Their story concludes with an enduring message. Love is not determined by matching bank accounts, social standing, or privilege. True love is found in shared values, mutual respect, and the willingness to learn, grow, and contribute together. Gabriel and Jasmine's journey reminds us that relationships built on character, empathy, and authenticity are the most meaningful and transformative. This incredible story shows us that love isn't about matching bank accounts, but about matching hearts. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what lesson from Gabriel and Jasmine's story resonated most with you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because tomorrow we have another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Your support means everything and helps us continue bringing you these powerful, life-changing stories.